Welcome to The State of Us. Real people with honest opinions and the future of responsible media. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
Thank you all for tuning in. Is tech's future up to us? Well, maybe, but that's what we'll be talking about today. We'll figure out if the implications of what to come, basically how it will affect nearly every aspect of our lives, and to what extent we have any power over what those changes will look like. But of course, we couldn't have this conversation on technology and robots taking over the world without
your friendly redneck liberal, Lance Jackson.
Getting my Eagles ready. Take down the drones.
Yep.
Yeah.
Got a tech show today.
Even though I read, where drones sometimes get medicine to people that need it. So there may be a good, it's like all things, right? There's some goods.
Some good.
Yeah.
Mostly good, probably.
Mostly bad, but some good.
Okay. So this idea came to us from the Wall Street Journal Saturday, Sunday, November 17th, 18th paper. And it was a column entitled "The Future of Tech?" ? It's up to us. So the argument that the column put forth,
I like that part,
is that it is up to us.
It's up to us.
That's right. But what we're talking about is it really? And that was Lance's kind of thought here on how we could turn this into a show. So that's what we'll be looking at. But the reason that you care, hopefully, might seem obvious from what I mentioned before. It's likely to really affect pretty much many aspects of all of our lives, such as what jobs will be available, how jobs will change, travel, how you travel, when you travel, and not only travel for leisure, but regular travel, like to and from work, and then life just in general. Conveniences or things that today we spend a lot of time doing that we'll no longer spend time on, and how that frees things up. So,
and the big one that nobody's taking a look that nobody's talking about, and that's education.
Mm-hmm.
Throw that in there just because,
Education.
Because education is going to have to change. If jobs are going to change and technology changes, then what we decide to teach and how we decide to teach it probably needs to adapt with that, and get out in front and be proactive instead of reactive.
One of the things we're going to take a look at is the expectation that regulations not so much will change as will develop. There's not a lot of regulation around privacy and data right now. And because of a lot of what's been happening over the past couple of years, it seems like the time is right for sweeping regulations that govern how tech companies manage and use our data. And so a big part of that will obviously be making sure that we have people educated on what the new regulations are, what your rights are, because we're going to be establishing new rights that are guaranteed to you by your government. So we have to make sure that people know what those are so that they're not getting taken advantage of.
But can we take a step back and to make an argument that you made this summer with Facebook's issues in front of Congress? We need to educate the politicians on what's going on so that they can make regulations.
That's right.
I mean, as you argued, I thought so eloquently this summer, that it was obvious that many of the senators had no idea what Facebook does or how it works or how the technology works and what its capabilities and what its issues and problems are. So it's going to be really hard for government officials to make the rules governing this, the regulations to govern all of this technology when they don't understand it.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you don't want them.
I mean, not to get us off track to start with, but I thought you argued that very well and convinced me that that's a real issue. That, okay, if we need to make some regulations, the people to do it aren't the people that are in Congress right now, because they know less about technology than I do. Now, their aides probably know a lot. The people that help them and come up with things probably show them how to use things and use things to give them the information that they need. But I'm not so sure that, at least by the questions they asked during the Facebook inquiry this summer, that they totally understand what's going on with technology.
You have a multi-tiered education need. You have, as jobs change, probably what we teach will change to an extent in regards to kids and young adults. And then you have an education component of understanding how your rights are changing. And then you have an education component on making sure that people, particularly our lawmakers who will create said regulation, understand what these companies do and the implications of things. Because I always say that the first step in solving a problem is recognizing you have one. And if they don't understand the extent of the problem, then it's not reasonable to expect that they'll do a very good job of fixing it. So that's definitely, you got multi-tiered education. And as is typical, it's good that Lance brought that to the forefront. We pretty much say education on almost every show when it comes to solving issues or addressing new challenges, because it's pretty much always true, at least to some extent. So we're going to look at kind of 4 things today. The future of cars, okay, and specifically how Uber has changed things. Regulations, which we've already hinted at a little bit here. How jobs are going to change, and we're going to tease something that I'm sure we'll do a full episode on in the coming weeks, which is the automation of journalism, because this is something I'm remembering now, Lance, that when you and I saw this, I think the week before Thanksgiving, we had a brief discussion on the good and the bad behind what it could mean to start to automate some of these reporting, and I did air quotes there, tasks. So without further ado, then, Uber isn't yet profitable. So keep this in mind. As one of the largest privately held companies right now with the largest valuation, it isn't yet profitable. In fact, it's said that it expects not to be profitable for at least 3 more years. And Uber lost last quarter $1.7 billion. That's a lot of money to lose. I mean, holy moly.
Betting on the future. But later in the article, it says they expect to make $6 billion a year once they get the food part of their business up and running, where they sign on with restaurants to deliver your food. And I see that when I'm driving in the bigger cities. Obviously, we don't see that out here where we are, but I have seen that where people are parked in the to-go area, the pickup area, and they're coming out with oodles and oodles of food. And obviously it's not for them or even for their family. You know, they are going to go make deliveries. So I see where this is starting to happen, that people are doing this in the metropolitan areas. So it will be interesting to see if Uber's gamble pays off, that they think this will be a way that they can make money in the future, that people don't even have to leave the house
to get food,
to get their food.
Well, to have a meal made for them.
Right.
I mean, obviously you can get groceries and stuff, but this is a way of, you can have what you want from your favorite restaurant without having to go to the restaurant if you'd rather stay in. But also the big bet, I think, and kind of what the article contends that Uber is making, is that it can convince enough Americans to abandon their car. We've talked a lot about how automated cars may do that and what Uber's role in that will be. But really, I don't know how much Uber cares whether it's through automated cars or through their drivers, that the goal is it's cheaper and more convenient for me to use Uber to go where I need to go or to bring me what I need, like food. You know, I can either take Uber to the restaurant, or if I don't even want to, get ready and go out, I can just have Uber bring me the food. And they've done some testing with Uber's, other delivery services, not really available in this area yet, but where they'll do package delivery. They'll pick something up at a store and bring it to you. So this kind of concept is really, will Uber work? Will it be around? I mean, I'm sure they'll figure something out because there's so much money behind it now, they kind of have to. But ultimately what they're kind of betting on is we can convince enough people that they don't need cars.
Well, it's interesting we're talking about this on Black Monday, because you have Amazon or Cyber Monday, whatever it is, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, big sales if you get on the internet and buy stuff, right?
Big sales. Yes.
But they're delivering to your home. And this is, again, you don't have to get out. You don't have to drive your car. So will it be those kinds of places, the Amazons, that drive this and will just thinking off the top of my head here, will it be Amazon that drives that because people will use that more so? And then Uber offers this, hey, here's another part of your life where you don't have to do it.
Yeah.
And I know if I lived somewhere where I had that ability, I would definitely call Grubhub or Uber or one of these places
and have them
and deliver to me. That,
we used it a lot in Cincinnati.
The thing I hate the most is slipping on my shoes and getting out and going to get something and bringing it back home.
Yeah.
Because I'd rather do that than eat in the restaurant, but I still despise getting out.
Right. To go do it.
To go do it.
Well, and really,
that's almost a service that's one where I could see using this technology for me personally.
Yeah. Not so much the transportation aspect as the bring me the food.
Convenience.
Yeah.
Right. Not taking me to a ball game or home from a ball game or something like that. But the food aspect, I could see that.
And a benefit, just in a, another way that we don't think about we've talked a little bit about with the automation of cars, the climate effect. Not only is it more efficient to take rides by people who are, that's what they're doing all day, where it's not just destination to destination, back to destination, the original destination, where there's a lot of that. But especially with the food delivery stuff, where if you have to go out and get it and then come back, it's almost always going to be more expensive, more costly to the climate than if there's somebody already out doing deliveries who's going to bring it to you and do other deliveries while they're out. Instead of one person gets in their car or truck or whatever, drives to where they're going to go, then comes back. So there's that.
It won't ever happen where
too.
we live. I'm going to have to move somewhere. Because there wouldn't be enough customers, I don't think, for
I don't know. We'll
the
see.
Restaurants we have.
I mean, the whole thinking of the on-demand system, there has to be enough demand to warrant the people. But, I've been really pleasantly surprised by, because this is kind of a test into this area in our local community. Kroger just recently opened their pickup, clickless.
Right. They're still not going to deliver
location.
to you.
No, not yet.
Right.
But that's something that Kroger's in larger areas do. But what I'm getting at is I think the pickup is an interesting foray into this space in a small community where obviously Kroger ain't going to keep doing it if it doesn't work for them. Now, most of the time, I choose to pick up at their 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. window, which historically is not when people typically grocery shop. Most people, obviously some people do, such as myself, but most people don't shop for groceries in the morning at that time. So it's not usually busy when I go then, but when I had to go the week before Thanksgiving and the week of Thanksgiving, I went twice and I did a pickup, especially the week of Thanksgiving. I was like, oh no, I have to go get this stuff. And I was like, wait, I can pick it up. I don't even have to go in and see anybody.
Can't it be it doesn't have to be a certain size order yet or any size?
Any size, because as soon as you get over the 3, that's where I told you have to pay. You pay then for them to pick it for you. You pay a $4 and some cents convenience fee. But for me, the $4 with the digital only coupons that I get to use, typically I save more than that and I don't have to go inside. So the time it would take me to go in and find the stuff I want and the savings I can get from the coupons outweighs the expense of this service. But my point is with this, when I went on those days at more typical times, mid-afternoon, evening, there was other cars there. I mean, I saw the one time I was there, I think there were 3 others. And the most recent time, there were 2 others in the same pickup window, as me. So that was a good indication to me that, well, obviously there's some people that are interested who have downloaded the Kroger app and who are using the pickup, and they weren't all my age. I could see some of the others in the car, and there was a few, people of greater years of experience than myself.
A few geriatrics.
Yes.
Okay.
So that was encouraging.
Well, I mean, I could see that if you could drive still. I could really see it though, as I get older. Excuse me. And I don't necessarily want to drive or to be out any kind of delivery like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like isn't it interesting how it all comes in circles? Back in the 40s and 50s, you went down to your local grocery store and they would hire teenage men basically to bag your groceries and then carry them home for you. And you would pay them for
to do that.
Tip them to do that.
Yep.
And now here we go. What's old is new again. Now we're doing the same thing.
Yeah. We just modify it to fit the new, whatever the new system is. Interesting though.
The concept's not new. It's just how we do it.
Yeah.
The delivery system is new.
The food, the food delivery, will this come to us? Will it come to us as long as the cars are driven by people? Probably not. But when, and notice I say when, not if, when driverless cars become mainstream, I think you'll have exactly what you want, because then it's feasible for a company like Uber to, again, my thought is they rent space in some place like Walmart's parking lot where there's a bunch of room, and they have whatever, 5, 10 cars that wait there and automatically charge, electric powered. So they don't have to worry about gas. When they pull into the space, they start charging. And when somebody places an order, off they go, and somebody at the restaurant, they probably wouldn't even look. They'd probably be pretty small cars, and they'd probably have a way to keep your food warm or cold depending on what it was, because again, you don't have a half a place for the person. So,
okay. So how does the delivery take place?
So the car
pulls in my driveway.
It has multiple compartments. They've shown some prototypes of these. A pizza, I think it was Domino's maybe that did it. No, it was Pizza Hut. They showed one of their new Pizza Hut futuristic delivery vehicles. So there's no driver, and it has multiple doored compartments. Okay. Kind of like P.O. boxes is almost what it looks like, except obviously long and rectangular for pizzas. And it unlocks the given compartment with your order in it, so, and then you take it out and it leaves, and goes on to the next delivery, whatever that is.
So I still have to come outside.
So you still would have to go out of the door.
Ooh, that makes it tough.
Yep. And then even if you get away from cars, same thing with automation, drones delivering your food. Faster too.
Can't have drones delivering my food because my eagles will take them out.
Yeah. Well, you have to train them, They're
down, boy, down.
Friendly eagle or friendly drone. Yeah, don't take that one. So that's some of the ways that the idea of both travel and cars are going to change. And the extent to which we have an influence over it. If there's enough people like Lance in an area like this, I'm one of them too. Delivery is always popular for pizza places. So I'd imagine that, again, once we have those automated forms of delivery, that those will become available pretty much anywhere.
I can see this happening. Yeah. This is one area where I can see it developing and becoming the norm.
Because it's not as big a deal if the automated car has to wait around. But obviously, if you're a human driver, and that's where the problem comes in for Uber in a place like Urbana, I'm not going to sit around for 2 hours waiting for my next ride, because I'm not making any money then. But if they own the car and it has to sit around, no big deal. I mean, it's not costing them necessarily for the car to just sit because there's no person in it. So you don't have to pay for its time. You pay for the miles it drives, which will change. Also, I imagine the affordability of the delivery. I would expect that proportionally the cost will decrease over where it stands now once the automation kicks in. And so that is a nice segue into the jobs component, because we're already highlighting a little bit of that. So we'll save our regulation wrap up for last. But before we do, Lance, what are we doing here? What's TrueChat trying to accomplish?
Well, we're trying to educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversations.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Short and sweet.
Well, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I think so.
We're trying.
Drones, eagles, self-driving cars, Uber.
I haven't talked about getting a shotgun yet. I mean, I'm being respectful.
That's right. Yeah. Well, you even see.
I'm even saying that this. I can see where
you would probably use a food delivery service.
And as I get up there in years and it's harder to get out and everything else, it might be easier to learn the technology and have things delivered or shopped for me,
right,
than it would be to physically do it myself. But that would be admitting defeat, and I'm not sure that's where I have to get over that part.
Yeah. And I think,
because doggone it, I still want to get my own stuff.
Right.
But there comes a time when, and this is where it becomes a cost issue. There are other things that I want to do. So if I would rather do 1 and 2 and shopping's third on my list, well, then if I just take care of the shopping and then I go pick it up, then that's something that I can do. It's another hour I have of my day or my week.
Right.
That I get to do the things that I want to do besides shop.
Well, and they've even, some of the ideas have also centered around with this whole delivery idea, because this is a big part of how jobs will change. You talk about as automation takes over, the elimination of many things like delivery drivers, and not just in food, but in packages and all kinds of things, because it won't be necessary. In other words, the article points out that jobs, there's strong evidence that all routine labor, both physical and mental, is headed toward automation. So if it's a routine task, mental or physical, then there's a good chance that it'll be replaced by a machine, because it's just not, from a business standpoint, there's no reason to pay a person who gets tired, who needs benefits to do it, when you can pay a machine who never has those problems to do it.
Well, that's been coming the last 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
I mean, very obviously, and much faster.
And people talk about too, well, what about this problem of, they're going to displace too many jobs, too many people. The reality is that new jobs get created too. Obviously, the top jobs will be engineers to take care of the machines, to service them or to troubleshoot or to operate them. I mean, everybody thinks about, the early future of drones is not likely to be automated, because air travel is a whole other thing than on a road. It's already really complicated, as the article next to this points out, the bumps ahead for self-driving cars. This is already really complicated, and they're still trying to figure it out. Flying is extra complicated because you're adding another dimension in which you're traveling. So from that standpoint, it's likely that the drone that brings you the food will probably be piloted by somebody, at least part of the time. Once it's picked up the food and it raises to its cruising altitude, it may be on autopilot until it reaches your place, and then a person takes over again to maneuver it down to wherever your designated drop-off area is,
With the joystick or whatever. Right?
Yeah.
Sitting at a computer screen delivering it.
Well, it's just like people have to remember that pretty much all drones operated by the military are being piloted by somebody at one of the command centers. There's an actual human pilot who's certified to fly planes or jets or whatever they're flying, who's at the controls. It's not actually out there doing all this by itself. The difference is the people can fly more of them, like in the drone situation, because there's that window of time when it can be on autopilot. And they don't have to physically be out there, so you eliminate the infrastructure problem of, we have to station these people who can take off from these areas. You can rent out some Walmart rooftops. I don't know what it is with me and Walmart, but the big parking lot, the big roof, the drones they just take off from the roof and they're all stationed there. I don't know. So there's a lot of those things where these routine jobs go away, but you bring in these jobs that require compassion, or some degree of emotion that will continue to be filled by people. For example, what you and I are doing now, it's not likely to see discussion-oriented and entertainment-oriented programming turn to automation on the creation level.
You don't think they can replace me with a robot? Take all my ideas and thoughts and
that's where we get to the big
sayings and everything else
today, right?
Program all my brain functions into
how far should we take it?
Yeah.
I
would think they could.
Eventually, sure. I mean, I think we'll get there where they can in other words, we have something like 600 episodes of Lance sharing his opinions. Almost, 600 plus hours of content that you could give to a machine and say, analyze his opinions and beliefs. I mean, and that you would think that would be pretty good data. I mean, a lot of data. And not only do that, but learn his voice, and his vocal patterns. So I don't think it's so much a question of whether or not we can. It's the whether or not we want to. And I don't know. I mean, it's the reason I say it's a challenging question is because at a glance we'd say, well, no, we don't want that because, Lance wants to be the one that shares his opinions, not the robot Lance who has learned what Lance thinks and just espouses. But
I mean, I work for cheap, but even a robot could work cheaper. than me.
Right.
And more dependable, even though I'm dependable.
Yeah. Well, but if you wanted the Lance robot to do 3-hour shows every day,
right,
it could, because it'd never get tired. You know, it never would have anything else to do. It could, it just do that. No problem, you know, and I'm sure we could get to the point where it could even select topics to discuss.
See,
you know, but again, that goes back to, is that where we want to go? Because a lot of this focuses on the technology is coming and there's nothing we can do about it.
But that's the answer for everything. And that's what I was telling you before the show, you know, is we will get the technology that we want. If we don't want it, we as the consumer can stop it. And I have a little anecdotal story.
Okay.
You know, I was told 3 years ago when I took my flip phone in for service, they said, well, why don't you just get a smartphone? I said, because I don't want one. They said, well, you might as well get one because they're going to become obsolete. Well, then my wife went in and had to replace her smartphone, which I still haven't replaced my flip phone, but she had to replace her smartphone because it didn't work anymore and turn it in for a new one. And I pulled out my flip phone. It still works. And she said, see, he's got that old flip phone. He needs to change that in, right? And the assistant there said, oh no, we have those. We will always make those. So within 3 years, the whole attitude of the people working in the industry has changed to, you have to get rid of those flip phones because we're not going to make them anymore, to, no, there's enough people out there that want them. We will continue to provide them. So when we talk about all this technology, my argument is, yeah, it can exist. It can happen, but it will only happen as much as we, the consumer, want it to happen. That's why I said, oh, I can see the food delivery. That makes sense. But I'm not getting into a driverless car for somebody to take me somewhere. Because if it wrecks with my food, okay, I can get more food.
Right.
But if it wrecks with me, there may not be another me unless we have the robot me.
That's right.
So I think we have more control over this. So many people think, well, it's futuristic. It's going to happen. It's only going to happen if we allow it. So, I still think there has to be that component of people believing we still have some control here.
The technology will exist. The question is, will we use it? You know,
and how will we use it?
It's just like nuclear weapons exist. You know?
Right.
We know. There's thousands of them. It's not so much about whether or not they exist as it is whether or not we use them. You know, at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to is, and how we use them. Just because, you know, for example, this technology comes around that can analyze and, you know, share people's opinions and basically could duplicate a lot of what you say and do. Well, maybe we don't use it for the people that are around, but if Lance was told that, you know, if you were invited to a Smithsonian where you could talk with Thomas Jefferson or, you know, any of the founding fathers, because they have enough data, enough journal evidence to have a computer that's recreated enough information that you could have a legitimate 2 or 3 minute conversation with them. Would you really want to turn that down? Wouldn't that be a neat opportunity? I don't know, but my point is there's other ways it could be used that aren't bad, that would have some legitimate benefit to them. You know, for example, getting more people interested in history. If we bring history alive through computers, animation, and other related technology, maybe more people will get interested. You know, if we could recreate a true discussion between Adams and Jefferson, I'd be interested in listening. You know, because it would be, if nothing else, it would be entertaining. So there's some other opportunities that allow us to educate ourselves or explore things that we're unwilling to let humans do. You know, just like how we experiment on animals right now with a lot of medication. I was just watching something the other day that talked about one of the new supercomputers that was built by IBM is going to be in service for about 2 or 3 years. It's connected to the internet and it's analyzing all kinds of data about earthquakes and other things. But what it's going to be put to work for, it's going to be unplugged from the internet forever in about 2 years. It'll be put to work for the military in running simulations on our nuclear arsenal. Because we no longer test them, they don't really know because they never planned for them to hang around this long. We don't build new ones and we don't test the ones we've got. So we don't know what these 30 or 40-year-old weapons, if they're going to work right. So instead of having to go to the risk, the time, and the effort of actually trying to test them and the massive political implications of what it would mean if we tested a weapon again, instead, they can put all the data into the computer and it can run umpteenth million scenarios and give us the most probable, likelihoods. In other words, we've run it 1 million times or 20 million times or whatever, and most of the time, 90% of the time, they worked. Great, and that saves us from having to test. Aside from it's going to be more accurate anyway, because we're probably not going to test the weapons 1 million times over to see what happens. So there's a lot of positive things like that too, that are where they're already functioning in ways that protect people, as opposed to just take away things that we can do. They're doing things that we are unwilling to let ourselves do.
Okay.
I think the last thing that we'll end on, because this automation of journalism, I think we'll do an episode on it, because okay. I don't know if trying to talk about it in 2 minutes
and a half is worthwhile. Right.
Mm-hmm. But the last thought here, Lance, too, is, we talk about the bad of jobs going away or less personal connections or what have you. But when we think about if your drive to and from work was no longer something that required your attention, it's automated. If your groceries are getting delivered, because you spend a lot of time, and when you add it up, even though we live in a modern society, we humans spend a large portion of our lives focused on feeding ourselves. Now, obviously, we have to keep eating, but we can minimize the time that we spend procuring food in whatever form that is. So all this adds up to more time for people. New jobs are created, but we also get more time because routine tasks that we've had to do disappear. So what does that mean for society? What does that open the door to for people to engage in? Both bad and good. The idle brain is the devil's tool, right? Or the idle brain is also what yields some of the greatest creative work.
Or each person is expected to do more because you've been given technology that can do more work. Mm-hmm. So you end up working even harder.
Or like we've talked about.
Which is what we've seen within offices and places with robotics and computers, is that people are being expected to produce even greater amounts because, you have now a machine to do this. So you need to work even longer and harder because the machine is. So worker output has risen because we have the machines, which then comes back, what do we do with those people who don't have those job skills?
And that's exactly where I was headed, which is what's the future of people who can't find the new work? So it's a good question, but we'll leave it up to you guys to discuss for now. We are looking forward to doing another basic income episode with our friend Scott Santons, who was on a couple years ago. So we're going to do an update on that in the coming weeks. But in the meantime, let us know questions you have at TrueChat.org on social media. We'd be happy to attempt to answer them the best we can, or at least get us thinking. Maybe you have a counterpoint to some of what we've said today. Any final thoughts, Lance?
Nope. Find us on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcast, and anywhere fine podcasts are broadcasted.
For the state of us, on TrueChat in Urbana, I'm Justin T. Weller.
And I'm Lance Jackson.
Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Be the change.